obviously. I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player. I think about myself in a high regard, of course. So it's not my decision.
Do you feel like you showed enough during preseason as to why, you should be here and you should get a shot?
Yeah.
The Browns may have just done what no team in the NFL can afford. They might have lost their most promising quarterback before Week 1, and not to injury, but to pure ego. Shedeur Sanders walked straight out of the locker room. No words, no warning, just stripped off his pads and left the building. His coach had just ripped into him publicly, after one of the best preseason performances we've seen from a rookie this year. No celebration, no encouragement, just cold criticism and a brutal announcement that another QB would be taking the first-team reps. The reaction? Silence. Shock. Even the veterans didn't know what to say. But what started as tension between a coach and a rising star quickly turned into something bigger. Way bigger. We're talking power struggles, locker room divisions, media chaos, angry fans flooding the internet, and a franchise that looks like it's seconds away from full-blown collapse. What happened inside that locker room might have just changed the Browns' future forever. Let's break it down.
It wasn't my decision, of course that's a quarterback's dream, and that's what every quarterback, thrives for, is those moments. So it wasn't me, but I was happy that Huntley got in and he handled the business. So if anybody else would do it, it'll be him. Nah, of course it's gonna always be, a little tender, but it's a non-factor for me.
I was trying to ask you this again, but how do you think you played out there?
I think I had a decent performance. Yeah.
What happened after the Browns' preseason matchup with the Rams wasn't just surprising, it was the kind of moment that sends shockwaves through an entire franchise. Shedeur Sanders had just balled out. We're talking 18 completions, 247 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions against the Rams' starting defense. For a fifth-round rookie, that should have been the moment he silenced every critic and earned the respect that had been withheld for months. Instead, it went the opposite direction. Inside the visitors' locker room at SoFi Stadium, head coach Kevin Stefanski delivered his standard post-game speech, but according to multiple sources, what should have been praise turned confrontational real fast. Stefanski reportedly singled out Sanders, not to celebrate his performance, but to criticize specific plays' third-quarter decisions, reads, and audibles.
I think, it's a lot of areas I can improve in, in different things, but I'm going out there to compete the best I can. Different places where I could got my eyes in better spots and got to the progressions quicker, and regardless of anything, so all those sacks, they definitely on me. Yeah, I didn't know I was out. Yeah, I didn't know. I was on the bike, I was powering up. I was powering up for that 2-minute drive because, that's just a situation every quarterback dreams for. That's many situations I've been in before, and I thought I was in. So then he told me I wasn't in, and I was like, okay.
Now, coaching feedback isn't unusual. Every player faces scrutiny, especially rookies. But what caught everyone off guard wasn't the what, it was the how. The tone was sharp, the wording felt, as one insider put it, calculated as if it was meant to sting. Stefanski questioned Shedeur's pocket presence, his decision-making, even his leadership, all in front of the entire locker room, right after a lights-out performance. And then came the dagger. Stefanski announced that Dylan Gabriel, another rookie quarterback, would be getting more first-team reps moving forward. No explanation, no balance, just a chilling verdict. And then silence. Veterans in the room reportedly exchanged uneasy glances. Assistant coaches stood motionless. Nobody said a word. But Shedeur did, just not verbally. Without saying anything, Sanders removed his shoulder pads, stood up, grabbed his bag, and walked straight out of the facility. No sideline tantrum, no shouting match, just quiet, controlled defiance, the kind that sends a message far louder than words ever could.
Nah, coach in the middle of play call, he's not going to do all that, in the middle of everything. Definitely just talking about what we could have done better, of course. That was what we was talking about coming off the field. A lot. You know, I'm blessed for him to be here. You know, regardless if he's here or not, come Monday, come Tuesday, or, you know, if any of us here or not, come the weekday. But I'm definitely thankful and blessed that he was able to come in my life and teach me great lessons. You know, one that I extremely needed, you know, to be able to thrive in this league.
At first, Stefanski brushed it off. Sources say he believed it was rookie frustration, something he'd handle later. But later never came. By the next morning, Shedeur still hadn't returned. The team tried contacting him. Phone calls went unanswered. Messages were left on read. It was clear Shedeur Sanders wasn't coming back, at least not without something changing. And just like that, the Browns, a team with playoff aspirations, and finally a quarterback who looked like the guy had a full-blown crisis. This wasn't a sideline spat. This wasn't about ego. It was something deeper. Something that had been building behind closed doors since the moment Sanders was drafted. What happened in that locker room was just the boiling point, the eruption after months of quiet disrespect, subtle resistance, and growing tension between player and coach. It stunned the locker room. It caught the front office off guard. And it ignited a wildfire that's still burning today. But what made it all hit even harder? This wasn't the first sign of tension between Sanders and the Browns coaching staff. This had been building since day one. To understand why Shedeur Sanders walked out that night, you have to rewind, because Saturday wasn't an isolated incident. It was the breaking point of something that had been brewing quietly for months. From the moment Sanders was drafted by the Browns, the message from ownership was crystal clear. This guy wasn't just another late-round arm. He was a potential face of the franchise.
No, it's not anything specific. It's being around him every day, understanding how he goes about things. You know, he's in a lot of similar situations, so he's giving that perspective about how to stay ready. So that's everything. That's everything to me, and I'm thankful, extremely thankful that he was here on this team.
The talent was obvious, and the fan base bought in immediately. Jersey sales spiked, training comp ticket disappeared, media buzz lit up, but one group never seemed fully on board: the coaching staff. Insiders say that while the front office and ownership pushed publicly for Sanders as the next Q-bone, Kevin Stefanski and several key assistants were cold from day one. The vibe? Professional politeness layered over quiet resistance. Sanders was given limited first-team reps during early camp. His playbook installation was reportedly condensed. Time with starting receivers? Limited. Team meetings? Awkwardly short on positive feedback. And despite sharp performances during scrimmages and early preseason practices, Sanders kept hearing the same cliché feedback. You've got to earn it. Now look, every rookie hears that. But Shedeur was earning it, again and again. His accuracy was elite. His processing speed caught attention from even veteran DBs. He wasn't just stringing together flashy throws, he was diagnosing defenses and outplaying expectations. And yet, no matter how high he climbed, the tone from Stefanski's staff stayed the same. Restrained praise, drilled, in critiques, and subtle reminders that his name doesn't mean anything here. But it wasn't just what was said, it was what wasn't. After preseason Game 1, where Sanders outperformed all expectations, Stefanski praised the offensive line. After Game 2, when Shedeur put together 2 touchdown drives, the focus in press conferences was on penalties that need to be cleaned up. Again and again, Sanders was the invisible man. Behind the scenes, though, he kept it professional. No complaints, no drama. He was clocking extra film hours, studying complex coverages, building trust with receivers. One assistant coach even admitted privately, he's ahead of where any of us expected. Maybe that's part of the problem. So when Stefanski stood in front of the entire team after a near-perfect game and humiliated Sanders over what insiders call routine rookie decisions, something snapped. It wasn't about the criticism itself. It was that after all his work, all the restraint, and all the results, they still didn't respect him. And then to hear Stefanski give Dylan Gabriel, a third-round pick who hadn't made half the impact, a public promotion to first-team work? That wasn't just disrespect, it was a message. No matter what you do, you're not our guy. Sanders didn't argue. He didn't push back. He just left because in that moment, the quarterback controversy wasn't about who was better. It became about something far more dangerous: loyalty, pride, power. And after that locker room speech, all three officially collided. The walkout made headlines, but what happened after Shedeur Sanders left the building is what truly shattered the Browns from the inside out. At first, nobody panicked. Stefanski reportedly brushed it off as the kind of emotional reaction rookies have. He expected Sanders would cool down and return the next morning ready to move forward. He didn't. No texts, no calls, nothing. By Sunday morning, uncertainty turned into alarm. Team officials started making frantic attempts to reach him. Multiple calls went straight to voicemail. Some messages were read, but not a single one was answered. According to sources close to the situation, Sanders wasn't ghosting them out of spite. He was making a point that he wasn't returning until something fundamental changed. The Browns front office caught completely off guard. They thought they had a rising star with a calm, business-like approach. But now, he was gone. And the locker room was left trying to figure out what had just happened. And that's when things truly unraveled. Reports began to leak. Stefanski's verbal jabs, the icy tone, Dillon Gabriel getting the nod. But even more damaging wasn't what the media heard, it was what the players saw. This wasn't some immature QB sulking over criticism. This was a composed professional who finally decided he was done being the team's silent scapegoat. And here's the part the public didn't see. Veterans weren't mad at Sanders. They were mad at the coaches. One offensive lineman privately told a reporter, "He did everything he was supposed to do. Worked. Listened. Led. What more do they want?" Another player added bluntly, "That felt intentional. Like coach was trying to prove a point not just to Sanders but to ownership." Which brings us to the core of this chaos. For months, a silent tug-of-war had existed between the Browns coaching staff and team ownership. According to insiders, Stefanski resented what he saw as front office interference. He didn't want Sanders. The pick came from upstairs, and he felt pressured to adjust game plans and rotations around a player he hadn't endorsed. Saturday night's post-game speech? That wasn't just a critique, it was a power play. A message. A way of saying, I still run this team. But the move backfired, spectacularly. Ownership, especially Jimmy Haslam, was reportedly livid. Sources say he had personally backed the Sanders draft decision and saw the quarterback as a centerpiece for the team's future. When he heard Shedeur had left without a word after that performance, Haslam's frustration exploded. Suddenly, GM Andrew Berry was caught in the middle of a nuclear fallout between a coach defiantly defending his authority and an owner threatening to blow it all up. Emergency meetings were held, voices were raised, accusations started flying. Some staffers blamed leadership, some blamed ownership. Nobody agreed on how to fix it. And all the while, Shedeur Sanders stayed quiet. He didn't text, didn't tweet, didn't leak stories to the media because he didn't need to. The Browns were already doing a perfect job of tearing each other apart without him saying a single word. Sunday morning should have been a routine recovery day. Ice baths, film sessions, walkthroughs. Instead, the Browns' practice facility felt more like a crisis management center. Because Shedeur Sanders still hadn't come back, and nobody knew where he was. Coaches assumed he'd cool off overnight. Front office officials thought his agent would intervene, but as hour after hour passed with zero response, one thing became impossible to deny. Shedeur wasn't just making a point, he was drawing a line in the sand. Behind the scenes, the panic was real. Calls went to his agent, messages to his father, slightly panicked emails to his personal trainer. Nothing. No comment became the only thing Browns officials could say publicly, while internally, everything was on fire. The coaching staff was suddenly forced to pivot. Dillon Gabriel, the rookie who was supposed to slowly develop behind Sanders, now had to step into first-team reps by default. Not because he earned them, but because nobody else was left. And everyone in the locker room knew it. The offense, which had finally started to click behind Sanders, immediately lost rhythm. Offensive linemen were unsure about protection assignments. Receivers mismatched on timing routes. The flow was gone, everything felt off. One receiver reportedly told coaches, "There's a difference when 12's running the show. We all feel it." Meanwhile, Gabriel handled it like a pro. He kept his head down, said all the right things, worked hard, and still looked uncomfortable like a guy trying to carry a role he knows isn't really his. And the rest of the team? They weren't speaking openly, but they didn't have to. Body language said it all. The locker room had split. Some players, especially vets who believe in hierarchy and discipline, quietly supported the coach. They didn't love how it played out, but they believed Shedeur should have spoken up instead of walking. But a growing number, especially younger players and offensive skill guys, were furious, not at Sanders, at the organization. The sentiment was simple: this didn't need to happen. Especially when the entire locker room watched the disrespect unfold in real time, no one could pretend it was just a misunderstanding. And then came the public fallout. Within hours, the hashtag #FreeShedeur was trending on X, formerly Twitter. Fans began flooding team social posts with Start 12. Comment sections exploded with supporters demanding Stefanski's resignation. Season ticket holders made threats. Merch stores reported a spike in Sanders-related gear, even though he hadn't said a word. And in just one weekend, Cleveland, a city aching for football stability, was spiraling again. But far beyond public perception or fan meltdowns, the deeper problem was internal. The Browns had built their entire season around eliminating distractions, creating a championship culture, establishing unity. And in 2 days, they lost it all. Because Sanders had done more than just leave the building. He'd created a vacuum. And now, the Browns were scrambling to fill it without the one guy who made it all work. By Monday morning, the Cleveland Browns didn't look like a playoff team. They looked like a broken locker room wearing matching jerseys. On the field, Dillon Gabriel was taking first-team reps. Quarterback's coach was quietly reshuffling drills. Offensive coordinator was making audible game plan changes, all with one giant problem they refused to say out loud. The offense wasn't responding. Gabriel did his job: crisp footwork, clean mechanics, no glaring mistakes, but it didn't matter. The spark was gone. The urgency, the explosiveness, the rhythm that had started to build under Shedeur Sanders vanished. Receivers were out of sync. Linemen hesitated. Confidence tanked. One skill player reportedly told a team rep, "This doesn't feel like football anymore. It feels like politics." And while the team tried to keep things business as usual, things outside the building were anything but. The public didn't just notice what happened, they exploded. Social media turned into a war zone. The hashtag #FreeShedeur was now trending nationwide. Posts with Start 12 were appearing under every Browns update, even ones unrelated to quarterbacks. Fans weren't just upset, they were emotional. Betrayed. Exhausted. Cleveland's history with quarterbacks is infamous. Failed draft picks, constant changes, struggles with development. It's a cycle the entire city is desperate to escape. And now, just when it looked like they'd finally struck gold in Shedeur Sanders, it felt like the team was burning it all down again on purpose. One viral tweet summed it up. Only the Browns could find a franchise QB and run him off before week 1. Radio stations lit up with angry callers. Commentators demanded Stefanski's resignation. Even local bars, restaurants, and merch shops got in on the chaos, some announcing they'd boycott Browns games if Sanders wasn't back before the regular season. Then it got national. Former NFL players started calling out Stefanski publicly. Analysts pointed to a toxic cultural breakdown. Even ESPN hosts began speculating on whether the Browns had any idea what they were doing anymore. And then came the post that changed everything. Late Sunday night, Deion Sanders, aka Coach Prime, tweeted a cryptic message. "Real ones recognize real disrespect. Stand tall. No name. No tags. No context." But everyone knew what that meant. It was a clear endorsement of his son. And a direct shot at the Browns. Inside the building, the tension doubled. Coaches were walking on eggshells. Position meetings were dead quiet. Players whispered in hallways. Lines were being drawn, and no one could figure out how to pull them back together. Even veterans were divided. Some saw this as insubordination. Others, a necessary stand against a coaching staff that refused to adapt. And as internal fractures deepened, ownership couldn't stay quiet anymore. Jimmy Haslam's private jet was spotted leaving Berea headed west. Destination? Colorado. Because this wasn't just about a quarterback anymore. It was now a full-blown war for control of the franchise. And neither side looked ready to back down. For Cleveland fans, what's happening with Shedeur Sanders feels eerily familiar, too familiar. Another quarterback controversy. Another locker room in chaos. Another season on the brink before it even begins. And while this situation is different, the feeling isn't. Because all of this is exactly what Cleveland has spent decades trying to escape. Think back. Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel, Deshaun Kaiser, Baker Mayfield. The list is long, depressing, and all too real. Injuries, poor development, broken confidence, mismanaged expectations, you name it, the Browns have done it. Over and over again. Now, here they are again, except this time the quarterback isn't the problem. Shedeur Sanders has the tools, he has the stats, he has the support. For once, the city finally believed it had a real future at quarterback. And now, the team's about to fumble it with 0 defenders in sight. It's not a talent issue. It's not even about wins and losses yet. It's about something deeper: respect, communication, and choosing control over collaboration. Sources say Stefanski's post-game call-out of Sanders wasn't just coaching feedback, it was intentional. He was frustrated with what he saw as growing interference from ownership, the feeling that he no longer had control over his own team. So, his response? Reassert authority. Publicly shift first-team reps to Dylan Gabriel. Make it clear that coaching decisions belong to the coaches, not the front office, not the fans, and definitely not the Sanders family. But in doing that, he may have just triggered the most dangerous quarterback implosion Cleveland's ever faced. Because this time, losing your QB doesn't just risk a season, it risks every ounce of progress the organization claims to have built. The Browns spent the last 3 years branding themselves as a new culture: stability, development, accountability. And yet, one preseason speech exposed how fragile it all really is. Inside the facility, players see the contradiction. On one hand, Stefanski preaches earning roles and building trust. On the other, the locker room watched a high-performing rookie get dismissed, criticized publicly, and replaced after leading the team to one of its most cohesive offensive performances of the offseason. Veterans now find themselves stuck. Do they speak up and risk splitting the locker room even further? Or stay silent and watch a franchise-level talent walk out the door? One team source put it like this: "This isn't just losing a quarterback. If Shedeur walks, we lose the fans, the locker room, and whatever culture we claim to have." And they're not wrong. Because if Cleveland goes back to being that team, the one where quarterbacks come to die, the damage won't end with this season. It could take years to undo. Years this franchise no longer has. By midweek, it wasn't just Cleveland watching this disaster unfold, it was the entire NFL. Because if Shedeur Sanders really walks away from the Browns over a coaching dispute, that's not just a first for Cleveland. That's a first for everyone. You don't see this in pro football. Rookie quarterbacks, especially fifth-rounders, aren't supposed to have leverage. They're supposed to stay quiet, follow orders, and wait their turn. That's how it's been for decades. But suddenly, here's Shedeur outplaying expectations, earning his reps, and still being publicly demoted. And instead of accepting it, he walked, he disappeared. He made the franchise blink first. And the league took notice. Within 48 hours, reports started surfacing. Front offices from across the NFL began quietly making calls, hypothetically, of course. What would it take to trade for Sanders? Is he really finished in Cleveland? If he's released, are we first in line? Teams like the Cowboys, Raiders, Panthers, Giants, all rumored to be watching closely, not because of drama, but because of value. This isn't some ego-driven bust. Sanders, as a late-round rookie on a cheap contract, brings something teams dream of: high upside, low cost, immediate fan buy-in, and right now, potentially available. There are whispers of contingency trade packages being prepped if the Browns signal any openness to moving him. But here's the kicker: no matter how interested teams are, Cleveland holds almost no leverage anymore. Because everyone knows the locker room's fractured. They know the fans have taken sides. They know ownership is scrambling to find a resolution. And if Shedeur continues to hold out, that leverage drops to 0 instantly. But beyond trade rumors and quarterback chaos, something even bigger is happening. Shedeur's stance isn't just shaking up Cleveland, it's shaking up the system. For years, the NFL has taught young players to stay in line, earn their place, and accept whatever coaching throws at them. Now, here's a rookie, not a star yet, not a Pro Bowler, looking an NFL head coach in the face and saying, if there's no respect, there's no game. Some call it entitled, others call it revolutionary. Because what Shedeur is doing sends a message especially to the next generation of quarterbacks. You don't have to wait until year 5 to demand professional treatment. You don't have to accept disrespect just because you're new. You don't have to lose yourself just to make a depth chart. And that message, it's resonating. Privately, even veteran players from other teams are speaking out, saying it's time for the old-school dynamics to evolve, especially when young talent proves they belong. Some are even calling Sanders the first rookie with star power and standards. But what happens next? That depends on whether Cleveland can fix what they've broken or if they're about to send one of the league's most promising rookies straight into someone else's huddle. By now, both sides in the Shedeur-Sanders standoff are dug in, and neither seems willing to move. Inside league circles, this situation has a label, a no-win scenario. Because here's the deal, Shedeur isn't asking to be handed the starting job because of his name, he's asking for basic respect. And after what happened inside that locker room in LA, his camp believes words alone aren't enough. Sources close to the quarterback say his return depends on 3 non-negotiables. A public apology from Stefanski acknowledging disrespect during the post-game speech. A guaranteed shot at the Cubone role, not just reps, but a real chance with the starters. A seat at the table on offensive game planning, not calling plays, but input that reflects his field vision and preparation. To most rookies, those demands would be unrealistic. But after outperforming expectations all preseason, leading the most effective offensive drives of camp, and still being pulled down in front of the team, Sanders doesn't feel like a rookie. He feels like he's already fulfilled his prove-it period. Now, he wants proof from them that they actually believe in him. But from where Kevin Stefanski sits, bending to those terms could be even more damaging. Because think about it. If he publicly apologizes and lets Sanders dictate playing time or strategy, that's not just admitting he was wrong, it's handing over the power dynamic. It's putting future decisions in jeopardy. What happens the next time a player doesn't like a coaching decision? What precedent do you set when a 5th-round rookie can walk out and come back on his own terms? Stefanski has spent years building structure, hierarchy, and process, all the buzzwords that come with trying to stabilize Cleveland. But if he's forced to appease Sanders to save the season, then he may lose the one thing coaches value above all else: control. Meanwhile, ownership is standing somewhere in the middle and it's tearing the franchise apart. Jimmy Haslam reportedly wants both sides, the player and the coach. He doesn't want to fire anyone, doesn't want to trade anyone. He wants the winning version of the Browns that was promised this offseason. But that version now exists only in theory. The reality? Every path forward takes a hit. Keep Stefanski and lose Sanders, you'll have a fractured fan base and starting QB who's there just because the other one left. Back Sanders and fire Stefanski, and you've just torched a locker room structure to keep one player. Maybe the right one, maybe not. Trade Sanders and be responsible for creating the next breakout star for someone else. There's no clean solution, no compromise without backlash. And every second the situation drags on, it pulls more people into the fire, teammates, coaches, executives, fans. Because right now, nobody knows who's steering this team. All they know is they're heading straight for a crash. This isn't just a quarterback controversy, it's a crossroads. For Kevin Stefanski, this decision could define his entire coaching legacy. Does he hold the line on discipline, or adjust to save a player who might just be the future of the franchise? For Shedeur-Sanders, this isn't about one speech. It's about setting the tone for his entire career. Accept disrespect now and risk normalizing it forever. And for the Browns, this is bigger than one season. It's about finally breaking a cycle of dysfunction that's haunted this organization for decades. Because if Cleveland lets another star slip away, not because of injury, poor play, or off-field issues, but because they couldn't manage power, pride, and personality, then nothing's changed. It won't matter what draft pick they hit on next, or how good their defense looks this year, or who signs the next contract. It'll always come back to this moment: the talent they had, the chance they blew, and the franchise they almost became again. So what happens now? Will Shedeur return? Will Stefanski survive? Will the Browns salvage what's left? Or is this just another chapter in the same old Cleveland story? Only one thing is clear: someone has to blink, and fast.